The Liberal governments are proposing a Renters' Bill of Rights. The person who comes up with these marketing slogans for these bills should be paid pretty well. It's pretty good. But some of these things that they're proposing in April is, yeah, pretty stupid. But I will give you my take on it anyways, because it will have some kind of impact on the market. Spoiler, and even though it says Tenant Bill of Rights, I think this is going to be beneficial for landlords way more than tenants, and you'll see why. Now, if you are looking for some help on how to navigate this real estate market, whether buying, selling, or investing in the upcoming spring, well, actually it is already spring market, in the spring market, you can book a call with me using the link that's on the screen that's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com.
Simply click on a date and a time that works best for you. And then when you see the prompt, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me, and then we'll chat then.
Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zhen, and if you're enjoying the content I'm putting out there, do me a solid and like and subscribe. So the article we'll be reviewing today is federal government's promising a Renters' Bill of Rights in upcoming budget. So what is this Bill of Rights proposing? So the Prime Minister is basically saying that he wants to protect those who rent as part of the upcoming budget. And what are these things that this Bill of Rights are going to be proposing? Well, the first off is they're going to introduce a national standard lease agreement. So let me break this down. I think the idea of having a national standard lease agreement is wonderful because they're trying to prevent landlords from kind of like maybe putting in languages that doesn't get, even used or is kind of illegal. A good example is that you cannot actually forbid pets in Ontario, nor can you kind of say, hey, I want post-dated checks on Ontario, even though most people actually put that in their lease. They're trying to make it such that the tenants understand, their rights, hence the Tenant Bill of Rights. My thing looking at this is, I don't know how they're going to implement that because landlord-tenant rules are by province. And a very good example is, let's look at Alberta versus Ontario. In Alberta, there's no such thing as rent control. You could increase the rent however much you want. In Ontario, there is rent control and tenants move on a month-to-month basis. So now you're trying to create one national lease agreement where the rules are different in each province. I don't know how they're going to do that unless they're going to have like a bunch of addendums or something. But again, we'll see. But just the initial thought of that from my perspective makes no sense whatsoever. Secondly, I'm pretty confident most provinces, they have their own standard lease agreement. We got ours in, I think, 2018, and it's been mandatory for everyone to use it, and it has been used anyways, right? So how they're proposing a national one, I don't know. I'm sure they're going to try, but yeah, it's going to be interesting, and we'll see how much of it conflicts, right? Because it seems like the different levels of governments aren't talking to one another. Yeah. So the next one is the requirement for landlords to disclose an apartment's pricing history to allow tenants to negotiate the rent. Cool. What is that going to do, right? If you have super low vacancy rates and say the landlord says, hey, I want $2,500 for this because there's nothing else on the market. What is knowing that they previously rented for $2,000 or $1,800 or $1,700 going to do? Nothing. What if the landlord renovated the property and now it's totally different? Right? It's a totally different product. So like the time in which the landlord decides to rent it out based on the market conditions dictates what the rents are. Right now, the rental market in GTA is a little bit soft right now because there's a lot of product. So there are rents that are coming down, right? So great, the landlords are now dropping their rents to get tenants in. It happened during the pandemic for a lot of condos as well. So cool. But having a history where they increase the rent, what difference does that make? I don't know. Right? It just makes no sense. It's like if you're trying to buy someone's house and they bought it in the 1990s for $150,000 and now they're listing it for 1.5. Who cares? What difference does it make? I don't know, but cool. I'm pretty sure this one would just be like more paperwork for a landlord, so whatever. And they have another one, which is a $15 million fund for provincial legal and organizations that help fight against rent evictions. So rent evictions are basically if a person comes in and they're renovating and then they basically say, oh, hey, you have to move out now. So therefore I'm gonna put it on the market after the renovations are done. So in Ontario, if that happens, the person, the tenant, actually has a right to lease that property back. So it kind of makes no sense that any landlord will come in and renovate it. So as long as the tenant just monitors it and has temporary kind of like accommodations, right, then they can go back, right? So it's I don't know what even 50 million bucks is going to do. Like, it just sounds like a bunch of stuff that they're throwing money at. Yeah. Anyway, nothing. And then finally, this is, I think, the biggest one. Making rental payments on time will count towards someone credit scores. So there's a lot of like prop tech. So like, real estate tech companies that have been doing this. One of the websites that some of our clients use is Landlord Tenant Credit Bureau. So which kind of keeps track of whether you pay rent or not, right? So there's a lot of this stuff out there already, and having the kind of federal government mandate it, cool. It's not really a big deal. I think it's wonderful for landlords because now we have another source to check whether they pay rent on time other than calling up their previous landlords that could be phony or they may not even have any, right? So as a landlord looking at this, I'm like, okay, if I see 2 late payments, you're out. Right? It's so obvious now if they have any late payments. So it's almost kind of like incentivizing the tenants to pay on time and not miss a payment, because if they have a missed payment and they make applications, unless they're fabricating their credit bureau, which again is very common now. But like if you can see there's late payments for rent specifically, why would any landlord, unless they're really desperate, let that person in? They basically, by having 1 or 2 missed rent payments, could screw themselves over for the next few years because it's on the credit bureau. It's insane, right? So as landlords that are probably looking at this, like, okay, great, cool. I have a better, more kind of concrete, definitive way of checking whether this tenant applicant is actually paying rent on time. Wonderful. We will go for it, right? Because we have all these other prop tech things that kind of check credit bureau. They give a score, they use AI. All this stuff is great, but we have never been able as landlords to check whether they pay rent on time. And if this shows up for it, wonderful, wonderful. Now, on the tenant side, I think let's look at from their perspective. If you are making rent payments that are large rent payments, which is what the liberal governments are saying, and it should count towards building your credit score, wonderful. Go for it, right? I think it's great for a lot of people trying to get in the real estate market. But I have never, ever talked to like a person trying to buy their first home that are like, hey, my credit score isn't high enough, so I can't get a property. It's always my income is not high enough. Like if you have, call it, depending on which credit bureau you use, like a FICO score or like the Beacon score, like 680, 720, your interest rate on your mortgage doesn't change, right? Like you don't have to be like a perfect 800, right? So it doesn't affect the interest rate. So it doesn't make things more affordable. It doesn't affect it. It's the income that affects the renters that want to go into being a homeowner, that whether they can buy or not this credit score. And if you already have like a 500 credit score, there's a very low probability that you're saving up that down payment to basically go and buy a property. And even if you are in that position, there's a lot of things you can do to go fix it, right? So the idea of having the rent reported on the credit bureau, probably way more advantageous for landlords than for tenants. And I think this is going to be another one of those things that it's going to have like a secondary effect that's going to come back and bite the liberals in the butt. But yeah, let's see what the actual proposition is in April when the federal budget comes out with this. But so far, at first glance, yeah, this just seems like nothing. More paperwork for landlords, advantageous for checking tenant applicants' rent, and this rent eviction thing, I don't know. And this national lease thing, I don't know. It just seems like a bunch of baloney, right? So that's my 2 cents on it. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what's happening. Realistically, it may move the market a little bit, but I don't think it's going to do that much. Without getting too political, this just looks like they're pandering for votes. That's realistically kind of it. Anyways, if you're looking for some help on how to navigate this real estate market properly, knowing all of this stuff is coming down the pipeline, you can book a call to me using the link that's on the screen. It's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one or this one? You know what? Just watch them both.